Шановні учасники конференції, запрошую.
Thank you, dear participants to the event. I'm kindly inviting you to the final panel of this conference. I am extremely grateful to the organizers for inviting the representatives of the civil society organizations. I would like to start by mentioning that I would like to start by reminding the words of the representatives of various cultural sites about not being ready for the invasion, which is quite natural because under the normal circumstances, cultural sites, cultural institutions aim at showing, displaying the cultural objects, inviting public to get acquainted with cultural objects rather than hiding them and attempting to preserve them no matter what. Unfortunately, this is what has been happening in Ukraine over the last 2 years. This is a very untypical function for the cultural institutions. Fortunately, the civil society organizations have been there to support them and to develop some guidelines, some methodologies, some recommendations to follow in order to ensure the preservation of cultural objects in the most effective manner. My co-panelists today are representatives of various civil society organizations which have been providing support to cultural institutions. I invite everybody to lean in, and I truly believe that success stories that the panelists are ready to share with us are not unique, and maybe there are people in the audience who would want to share their stories or to somehow join the initiatives which have already been launched by the civil society organizations presented in the panel. So now I would want to hand over the micro to Olha Ivazovska, Coordinator of Political Programs and Chairman of the Board in the Civil Network Opora. The Opora network has prepared a report on proving that Russian attacks on cultural heritage constitute a pattern. And my question is, can you speak in more details about what goals are the Russian Federation has in mind while committing all these crimes? Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the floor. One may be surprised by the fact that the civil society organization is dealing with documenting crimes against cultural heritage. But that's what we are doing, and in the framework of these activities, we contact potential witnesses from among Ukrainian refugees abroad. We interview them, and we are trying to pick up some information from them in order to get evidence about crimes against cultural heritage. By the way, we've recently conducted a research which proved that Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure and cultural objects aims at increasing the waves of Ukrainian refugees fleeing the country in order to reduce the country's capacity to to rebuild, including the cultural component of the nation. This is how Russian Federation tries to impede the restoration and rebirth of the country, because when there is less people, it is easier to appropriate and it's easier to absorb.
4 лютого 2000
It started not after the 24th of February 2022. It started in 2014 through illegal formations in the uncontrolled territories of Ukraine and some regions of Luhansk and Donetsk regions, but still the effective control over these territories is impossible and would not have been possible without impact on cultural environment, on education, on training. New human resources for the armed forces of the Russian Federation, which today in 2024 unfortunately are waging war with the representatives of the armed forces of Ukraine. We speak of the children that were studying in at the beginning of the occupation and that are today already of age participants of the armed aggression against Ukraine. We see the systemic policy that that we have seen after we have conducted a number of studies. Among them it's the legislation, public statements of persons in the uncontrolled territories who were in the conditions of effective control of the Russian Federation. It's Russian media and media who were represented in some regions of the Luhansk and Donetsk regions. It's the statements of Ukrainian government, because we need to also take it into account, and respectively the political assessments or investigations, publications on the social media, etc. My colleagues have analyzed tens of thousands of such notifications in Telegram, Contact, etc. as of 2014 in order to trace the goals, resources, and the overall and overarching purposes. The goal was not legitimate, but was clearly stated. As of 2014, there was a bureaucratic system established around this culture, history, education, changing of an identity. We cannot speak today of some separate, isolated facts because our people don't have access to occupied territories, it's clear, but the destroyed cultural object, it's one part of the problem. Another part of the problem is education of the population in the occupied territories that loses any connection whatsoever with the country. And the bureaucracy was instituted right after these territories were taken. We speak of 2014, when the so-called ministers of culture were established, when such financing was provided for the cultural programs, and when there was this transition into the effective control again via the system of the coordinates of the citizens who were present there. Ukrainian people know that I was working in the political subgroup in the Minsk process. I can say, and I can even testify, that as of 2016, the narratives about different peoples of Donbass, we don't have like one peoples, we had two peoples of Luhansk and Donetsk regions was used in the diplomatic track as well. We see judging from the decisions of the occupation power, from the narratives, publicly claimed narratives, that at first there was so-called sub-regional identity, that is Luhansk and Donetsk had two different peoples, then identity of the citizens of so-called DNR, LNR, and now we have this transition into Russian identity. The transformation into the Russian identity started from 2016. I have seen this change in narratives and in the diplomatic track of Minsk negotiations. How come? If you look into the Institute of Sociology and the National Institute of Sociology that used to have such annual study of identity, you will see that in the east of Ukraine, you see first Soviet, then regional, and then national identity. So in fact, through their representative satellites, by their resources, Russia created such type of coming back to first such sub-regional and then now openly to Russian identity. When this track didn't take off, when Ukrainian party didn't take this into account, didn't shape such separate regions, etc., that transition took place in 2016. We saw, for example, different humanitarian programs, how they were transformed, and it all was happening by rubles money of the Russian Federation. Between 2017 and 2022, we had certain humanitarian support programs for the residents of the occupied territories and so-called territories close to the hostilities areas, according to them, temporarily occupied by the state of Ukraine. And as of 2022, the humanitarian programs for all Russian-speaking nationals, irrespective of where they were. Why 2022? Very much linked to the changes to the constitution that were done over illegitimate, illegal referendum. It's not even the question of the violation of the procedure, though it's what is very close to my profession. But in 2020, there was this notion of not citizens of Russian Federation as which the state or the country must protect all over the world, but the people with Russian identity, and the confirmation of the Russian identity, according to all the programs that we looked into, is respective language. It's a reality. We see that in 2017 there were created the subjects of this process that were financed via Russian Federation, State Duma, members of Parliament, Office of Administration of Kremlin administration. You see in 2017 a separate program that was financed from a program Ruski Mir via the taxpayers of the Russian Federation. I will not be speaking of a huge number of details, but still, the fact that Russia was supporting so-called separate areas or republics, as they used to call them, is no news to us. But here we have a couple of figures regarding separate tendencies. For example, 170,000 new documents were removed from library funds since 2015. You might know that already we have the transition period of reintegration, culture, and education, where we have the deadline of 1st January 2026. You, while being present at these discussions, might not have seen it, but today we had the address of Vladimir Putin to the people's meetings, and we see milliards of rubles to education, to culture, to history, and as of 2025 in each village there will be special representatives of this program, which aim is to develop this specific new identity that is based on values of the Ruski Mir, of this totally distorted version of the victory in the Second World War, etc. And we see that the Russian Federation is no longer authoritarian regime. It's a totalitarian regime that has its ideology, and this ideology shapes the identity in a violent manner. Each educational establishment in the uncontrolled territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, unfortunately Zaporizhia, Kherson regions today showed, especially from 2016, their patterns. We have counted 46 legal entities from governmental and non-governmental organizations that were funded from the Russian Federation's budgets. And it had to do with specific staff representatives of such cultural institutions, so-called professionals, patronage over such cultural institutions, and unfortunately a number of transitional programs, training regarding unique and specific details of Russian culture, history, etc. Now we see a huge number of cultural objects and historical objects that today are expropriated or are placed in the territory of the Russian Federation, and which have lost this historical point from one management system to another management and or administration system, such looting museums, cultural establishments, etc. Confiscation of Ukrainian books and their replacement with Russian literature has objective horrendous manifestations. For example, in the Luhansk region we found evidence over OSINT or social media, a huge number of facts how this literature was collected, then burned in Melitopol. All Ukrainian-speaking literature has been destroyed, and it was destroyed by the Russian literature. Regarding the monuments, you know that when the Russian Federation entered this territory, they changed the name of the streets and it destroyed our cultural sites that shows the specifics of how Ukraine coexisted. They didn't have full statehood in the as a constituent part of the Soviet Union. First and foremost, the artifacts related to Holodomor were destroyed, irrespective of this Moscow Empire, no taking into account the exact name of that state at that point. So the factor of the war as such. Regarding the removal of Ukrainians, children, educational workers of the educational establishments into the territory of the Russian Federation, we have a huge number of evidence of such facts, and it was also supported by huge financing via programs that we can speak a lot. Now we have the programs listed, militarization, types of militarizations of children, then such heroization of the armed forces of Ukraine, when children were made to write letters to the soldiers of the Russian army. And when we speak of the second year of the full-scale invasion, and the child that is now a student of the second form, according to the Russian curricular, we understand what consequences will be there. All the database of these stories, cases are archived in a manner, if deleted from different social media websites. Our investigators, prosecutors, our researchers will still have access to them, but I guess it's just the beginning. Because it's evident that the cultural heritage is only element of identity, and if we measure the scale of the impact, we also need to measure the depth of this impact. Unfortunately, when it comes to the citizens who are now in the occupied territories, the state must think proactively how to work with this target audience, because they are under occupation not because of their political convictions as far as children are concerned. Thank you. Thank you, Olga, for such a very informative intervention. It's very important to understand here that when modeling these identities, sub-regional, Russian, the way the Russian authorities are trying to create right now, we see that a lot of cultural aspects is subject to destruction, not just related to Ukrainian identity, but whatever makes up Ukrainian political nation in terms of the pluralism of the nation that were shaped in this territory. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Denis Yashny, who is the head of the monitoring group of the Crimean Institute for Strategic Studies. And this organization, as of 2014, started working on the threats that were posed in terms of occupation and cultural rhetorics of Ukraine. What was subject to such destruction? What did you see? What are you focusing on? I hope you can see my presentation right now. The thing is that our organization was working on the first big case, and that was the case of Tavrida Highway, Kerch-Sevastopol Highway, 114 objects destroyed or damaged. Such huge cases as Kerch-Sevastopol Highway, Hansky Palace lives a lot in the shadows, things that we cannot see straight away without delving really deep into what we call the Russian space. Unfortunately, we have to do that. In 2016, work aimed at accounting cultural losses was started. We only had 4 people at that point. In 2024, we started working regarding all the occupied regions. Alexander Simonenko and Alexei Probzhenko, who joined our team in 2024, started also working regarding Donetsk and Lugansk region, but retrospectively, that is as of 2014, because they had experience. Sometime we were collecting this information in 2018 and 2019. Thanks to Renaissance Fund, we were able to launch our first website that contained information, and in 2022, I guess 7 days give or take before the full-scale invasion, we presented the final website, our first final website that we had to extend after the full-scale invasion. For now, has over 540 objects: Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Autonomous Republic of Crimea, and Sevastopol.
So raising these problematics entails many additional follow-up questions. In particular, if we talk about 31 museums in Crimea, they were governed by either local or national authorities. In general, there were more than 300 cultural sites in Crimea of various level of importance: national, regional, local. But the problem is that at the central level, only sites of regional importance are counted. That is why, as of today, we have some certain certain percentage of museums being actually included to the accountant list. For instance, if we take the city of Sevastopol, we name 7 museums which are not under control of Ukrainian government anymore, but in reality there are 40-something museums in the territory of Sevastopol, the city of Sevastopol, and the respective number of museum collections, museum funds. So the register of immovable sites if we talk about the territory of the Crimean Peninsula, includes only those objects which were established under the Soviet Union and under the independent Ukraine up until 2014. And only though it includes only those objects which were timely included to the register of immovable valuables. So there is a problem with proper accountant of cultural heritage sites as such, because of the above-mentioned reasons. The second problem is, or consists in the fact that we cannot establish all facts of attempts on Ukrainian cultural heritage which had been committed in Crimea after the occupation. So we have information from OSINT about unlawful extractions and unlawful fossils held in the territory of Crimea. However, it is complicated to prove at this stage without having access to actual sites that it comes to affect on cultural heritage. All in all, we are witnessing multiple violations of violation of Ukrainian legislation in the territory of Crimea under the auspices of implementation of Russian policy in the field of culture. Many violations have been committed due to the factor of implementation of infrastructural projects in the occupied territories. For example, many cultural sites were affected due to the construction of the of the route Tavrida. And other infrastructural projects, many of which are just unlawful wheels of the Russian president. In the territory of the city of Sevastopol, dormitories were built, including in the territories which are affected by such construction. Now in the picture you can see the project of construction of residential buildings on the shore of the lake Miloslavsky, and it seems that it doesn't have a direct linkage to protection of cultural heritage, but the problem is that the construction is taking place in the territory where 9 cultural heritage sites are located, in particular ancient tombs and other archaeological sites which constitute part of cultural heritage. So the Russian authorities which are responsible for the issuance of respective certificates and authorizations issued some 1,500 authorizations since the year 2014, when Crimea was occupied, and these certificates had a terrible impact on cultural heritage. The problem is with these certificates and with these authorizations consist in the following. Such deeds constitute criminal offenses, and the limitation, the statute of limitation for these crimes is 3 years, which means that we cannot investigate crimes which were committed and such violations which were committed before 2021. Thank you. Thank you, Denis. Thank you for this update. Dear audience, you may see how thoroughly and meticulously some of the civil society organizations have been working over all these years, trying to detect signs of crimes committed in the occupied territory, even under the circumstances where there can be no access to such territories. Now, let us move forward. Fortunately, we have some military successes in our package. Some of the formerly occupied Ukrainian territories of Ukraine were liberated, and now we have some civil society organizations intervening in the deoccupied territories for documenting and collecting evidence about crimes against cultural heritage. I'm now very pleased to give floor to Vasily Roshko, head of NGO Tustan and of Ukrainian Heritage Monitoring Lab. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I will start by saying that our very first intervention after the full-scale invasion was the one in Borodyanka, and the famous cock which was found in Borodyanka was transported to the Museum of Ukrainian Cultural Heritage. I will now speak from the standpoint of the activities of the organization that I represent, and from the perspective of my experience as an architect and as a member of the Ukrainian Heritage Monitoring Lab. As of today, our team counts some 20 people intervening across Ukraine. We receive funding from international partners, and we are guided by the methodologies provided by the international partners. We are focused on historical monuments in the first place, rather than cultural infrastructure as a whole. So we intervene by way of collecting information and data about historical monument located in various locations that may be affected by hostilities. So we are doing this to the end, with the aim of documenting, but also for informing Ukrainian military so that they could take this information into account when planning military operations. We exercise preliminary online monitoring of the cultural objects that are in the focus of our attention. Often we do that before actual going to the field. So we produce 3D models of damaged objects. We are also using the model, the screening model, which has been used in Iraq during 2 years after the war was over. We are doing this for 2 years as of today, while the war is still ongoing. We are also dealing with the fact of looting museums. As of today, we have reliable data on 11 museums looted. We collect information about cultural heritage sites from OSINT, among others. For instance, some of the sites which are located in the areas which could have been potentially flooded by the natural because of the natural disaster provoked by the Russian Federation. In respect of some of the sites, we found out that they were actually preserved due to the fact that were located on the hills. We collect information. We managed to collect information from about some of the museum collections which were looted by Russians from the territories which are now still occupied, including from Mariupol. We're not talking about digital copies, but about catalogs, about lists. This is something. This is not enough, but this is something. We collect evidence about attacks which took place on the 1st of January in Lviv, the university and the dorms where Roman Chukevich and Stepan Bandera, two key figures of Ukrainian rebel movement, used to study and live. So we collect evidence from various sources, and based on that, we draw up some certain lists which are not in the a database as such, but it is a list of reliable data which can give ground for further investigations, for example, or can be used for other purposes. I have to say as well that today it's not enough to draw up lists of cultural heritage objects. We need to just try to keep up with what was which we failed to implement over the years of independence. So it is not sufficient to have just lists in place, but we need to have a certain common methodology in place so that all the actors could follow the same guidelines, so that they are able to feed the database following certain scheme, and it will contribute to more complete and comprehensive collection of information and data. Thank you. Okay, dear colleagues, dear audience, you've just witnessed what a wonderful initiative has been implemented alongside other initiatives with the participation in the framework of close cooperation between Ukrainian CSOs and international partners. Our next speaker is Andriy Lutsyk, expert for cultural heritage protection and Regional Center for Human Rights. After 2014, Andriy's organization moved from Crimea to the territories controlled by Ukrainian government. I know that your organization has developed a series of recommendations, including for international partners. The recommendations cover what can be done alongside criminal investigation in order to somehow contribute to fight against cultural crimes against cultural heritage. Andriy, the floor goes to you. Please speak to us in more details.
As it was already mentioned, my presentation will be a little bit similar to the presentations of my colleague Solha Ivasovska. Has been and her team has been looking into the topic of the impact of Russian propaganda in culture, in particular on our citizens who are now in the occupied territories. And then there was a definition shaped that Russian moral values. So this definition was shaped as back in the security documents of the Russian Federation, dating back to right after the occupation of Crimea. In particular, this document as the strategy of the national security of the Russian Federation, and the strategy and the structure of the documents of this strategic document regarding the national security. The definition of Russian traditional cultural values set out on the 30-page document is mentioned 27 times. In the structure of the laws of the Russian Federation via strategic planning, by the orders of the president on the work on the establishment of the strategy and security. This policy is shaped, mentioned by my colleagues, and this policy is a strategic one. From the beginning of this war in 2014, the activity of Russia has strategic goals and strategic direction. These documents are interrelated, and what's written in the decree of Putin is implemented in Sevastopol, in Khersones, during the museum exhibition or any other events in the occupied territories, and that has been going on like that for years. What we are doing right now in Ukraine, we are counting damages, we are recording and trying to investigate crimes, so we are addressing international judicial institutions, and we are introducing sanctions. As an element of national security still, cultural security is not set out, and that is why we don't have a strategic vision, we don't have a mechanism for shaping the political will in order to change the cultural heritage. We don't see such systemic changes, because the problems that we are seeing since the outbreak of the full-scale invasion is to a greater extent a problem that we had before then, because the cultural heritage has always been not quite relevant. Let's come back to the issue of Crimea. We're also looking into archaeological digs out in Crimea in the context of looking into the cooperation with the law enforcement agencies and NAPC in particular. Here we see yet another focus that we don't pay much attention to. Its sanctions policy. Right now, we are aware, as of 2014 till the 2023, it's 1,355 open letters. Each open letter, as you saw from Denis Yashnit's presentation, is either full destruction of the archaeological exhibits or artifacts. It means over 1,000 objects of archaeology destroyed. It was provided by 175 archaeologists, and they were provided by concrete officials. They were submitted to archaeologists from 30 organizations, by 30 organizations. For now, Ukraine has imposed sanctions on 23 organizations that have taken part in the crimes against the cultural heritage of Ukraine, and on one official, Minister of Culture of the Russian Federation, that is right now in the office. We can also find 2 or 3 people from different other sanction sets who also were involved in the process of destroying the cultural heritage in Crimea. But the scale of what's going on is much more huge, and the problem is that it's going on right now It was going on yesterday and it will be going on tomorrow. It means that this question, as far as what we saw before, this question is a matter of national security. In particular, we need to shape our sanctions policy in the context of the fact that the destruction of cultural identity is a matter of national security. Here we must have some logic. We must clearly understand, because our sanctions of Ukraine, because if Ukraine introduces sanctions in terms of everyone mentioned on the previous slide, will not be very much tangible for them. But if we implement sanctions policy as a part of the strategy of countering the impact of the Russian Federation in cultural heritage, in particular as a means of communication, by convincing our partners to introduce sanctions against people who are engaged in the field of cultural heritage, who are destroying such archaeological and cultural objects, will be able to communicate, will be able to show each person and counteract this propaganda, will be able to show that they are criminals, they are perpetrators. In particular, in such a way, we will be able to diminish the influence of our allies and us in terms of Russian science that is governed in particular and culture that is governed by the decrees by Putin regarding some specific, somehow or other isolated, different from the Western cultural values. Thank you, Andrei. The proposal is for these tools of criminal punishment that we have discussed over today can be supplemented by sanctions tools that can be a systemic response to the fact that the sphere of culture is viewed by the Russian Federation as a tool of armed aggression, as a tool of assimilation, appropriation, and making another people apart from, far away from the Russian Federation, subservient. I thank all the speakers so much. I think that it was quite informative panel. Should anyone want to ask any questions, we have just one opportunity. Dear Anton, the floor is yours. Thank you. I have a short question to Denis Yashin. The documents that you're working on the Tavrida highway, do they make it possible to identify specific persons, and given from those documents, is it enough to open the criminal proceedings in Ukraine and further prosecute such persons via Interpol, etc.? There are permissions regarding the Russian Federation. They are issued regarding a specific person and specific element of the highway and specific site. It's possible, but then again we have Article 298. It's criminal violation, 3 years. That's it. And highway Tavrida is 2016-2019. Of course, we have some part in Sevastopol, some bypasses, but it's not exactly Tavrida highway. There are some passes that are being built via Denisivka to Paravalne, Simferopol part of the highway, but the first ones, the most mass excavations is 2016-2019. Time has been lost already. I see that Andrei wants to add something here. Actually, there are some methods, but it's harder with those excavations that took place before 2020, when we ratified the second protocol to the Hague Convention, because these crimes against cultural heritage are qualified in particular as war crimes, as the violations of the Hague Convention. Moreover, they are a part of the system that needs to be researched, reviewed, and it needs to be established. We see it already in the data presented, how complex we see the discrimination of Ukrainians as a nation, and that is a crime against humanity. And the objects of archaeology can be viewed and qualified in this manner. So such are archaeological excavations taking place by by the same people in the same site over a 10 years period. It's evident that it is a continuous crime that can also be viewed in the framework of the war crime. To say that if we have documentation and establishment of persons that have to do with it, it might be necessary and relevant in terms of qualification. It's a separate task that needs the involvement of Ukrainian pre-trial investigation bodies, the Office of the Prosecutor General, and it goes without saying the international partners that are ready to take part in prosecuting the perpetrators in all the jurisdictions that's possible. We heard from Karim Khan directly interest and readiness of the International Criminal Court to look into that situation quite extensively. And it's clear that ICC has jurisdiction not from the 2022, and in this sense, such retrospective view over the events taking place since 2014, it's possible. It's very important for us to shape that political will, for us to be able to work on that. So I'd like to thank everyone who was today with us as a part of this panel. Let's applaud to them.